As you know, when an activity first starts executing, its onCreate method is called, followed by a call to onResume. And also, after an activity has been paused and it's being brought back to the foreground, its onResume method will be called. Now, we're actually going to use the onResume and onPause methods in this app to register and unregister broadcast receivers respectively, and specifically the broadcast receiver that we use in this app is for determining whether or not the SMS message at the end of an order was successfully sent or not. So in the onResume method, lines 138 through 151 create the so-called text message status broadcast receiver. It's a new broadcast receiver, and we're overriding its onReceive method, which receives two parameters: the context in which the receiver is executing, that is, of course, this activity, and then an intent with information about the message. Now, if the result code, which we receive from the method getResultCode, is not equal to activity result OK, that would indicate to us that the message did not send successfully, in which case we're going to use a handler named viewUpdateHandler to display a message to the user indicating this problem. Now, viewUpdateHandler we'll take a look at the definition of in a later video within this lesson. The method sendMessage is going to receive a message object as an argument, and that message object will be passed into the viewUpdateHandler's handleMessage method, which, as you will see, we are going to define. We're going to override it in our viewUpdateHandler, and that method will then use the information in the message object to figure out how to respond to that message, whether it's to display a toast on the screen, which is the case when the SMS message fails in this app, or to possibly update the graphical user interface with text that was spoken to the user. So viewUpdateHandler.sendMessage is going to send the message object returned by this highlighted chunk of the code. ViewUpdateHandler.obtainMessage is saying that we want to reuse an existing message object. It turns out that Android maintains a global pool of reusable message objects for efficiency, and rather than creating your own message objects, you can just ask to reuse an existing one. So we get an existing one by calling obtainMessage, and in this case we're calling the version of obtainMessage that takes 4 arguments. The first argument is an integer piece of information that helps the receiver of the message understand the purpose of the message. In our case, it's our constant pizza.displayToastID, which means that we want to display a toast on the screen, a little quick message on the screen. And then the last 3 arguments are 2 arbitrary integers and an arbitrary object. And these are data associated with the message that you can then use when handling the message. In our case, the first of the integers, or the second argument, the first arbitrary integer, is a string ID, a resource ID, that we use to load up an appropriate string resource for display. And we're passing 0 for the second arbitrary integer and null for the arbitrary object, just because we're not using those 2 arguments in this example. But we could provide another piece of integer information and potentially an object full of additional data that could be used when handling the message. So we'll talk a little bit more about receiving and handling that message when we look at the definition of viewUpdateHandler in a subsequent video. So we've created our broadcast receiver here, and then the next thing we do is register that receiver to receive specific messages. So we call the inherited register receiver method, passing in our broadcast receiver as the first argument, and as the second argument we are creating a new intent filter with our constant pizza.broadcastString. And this is going to allow Android to only deliver messages containing that string to this broadcast receiver. So we only care about that one type of message, and the Android OS will now ensure that when the SMS message finishes either sending or fails to send, that the returning piece of information, the returning intent, is sent back only to this particular broadcast receiver, and it will only do that in the case where the SMS message had this string associated with it when we launch the intent for sending the SMS message in the first place.